Talking about time value of money, just sort of the introduction to it and some tools that we're going to be using. One of the things that we're going to use to learn how to do time value of money now is what's called an interest factor table. Now there are 4 of these tables, and on the blackboard side in this course now you'll find a button on the left that says TVM, time value of money, and if you press on that button it'll bring you to an Excel file that has 4 tables on it. And you need to print out each of the tables. And by the way, you need to print them landscape like this. Don't print them portrait, but print them landscape. Now there are just some fundamental things you need to understand about these tables. They're not particularly complicated. But first of all, there are 4 tables. There's one called the PVIF table, the present value interest factor table. We have an FVIF table, and this stands for future value interest factor. We have a PVIFA table, present value interest factor for an annuity. And we have an FVIF table, A table, right? And that's the future value interest factor for an annuity. Now, these are important things to understand and understand the layout of. And one thing you should understand is that in your notes, I told you that there's a question that you're going to have to ask and answer correctly to do time value of money. And that question is the cash flow we're dealing with, is it a lump sum or is it an annuity? Now, if it's a lump sum now, you're either going to use your PVIF or your FVIF table. These are lump sum tables. You can't use a lump sum table to solve an annuity problem. And you can't use an annuity table to solve a lump sum problem. And indeed, your PVIFA table and your FVIFA table, those are indeed annuity tables. And so you'll see as we go through here, well, every time we get to a question, every time we try to work a problem now, I'll ask you, is this a lump sum or is this an annuity? And as a student, you're going to have to get used to determining that question and coming to the correct answer. You're going to find later on in the lecture that if you can answer that one question, you have a 50-50 shot of getting the problem correct. Okay? But nonetheless, these are interest factor tables, and we're going to talk about those for just a moment here. Now, there's 4 tables. All of them are set up exactly the same way. Across the top are interest rates, and down the left-hand column, you'll find N or time periods. And to look up an interest factor, you have to know the interest rate and you have to know the N, the time periods. And we'll talk about that a little more later, but that's the basic layout of these tables. The interest rates that go across the top, if we're doing a present value application, we're using either PVIF or PVIFA. The little interest rate that goes across the top, it's referred to as a discount rate. If we're doing a future value application, if we're using FVIF or FVIFA, then the little interest rate that runs across the top, those are referred to as reinvestment rates. Now, if you have your table sitting in front of you now, you need to understand that to look up an interest factor, you have to know the N and the I. And so this one I'm looking at here, this is our present value interest factor table. And if I told you to look up your PVIF with N equal to 10 and I equal to 10%, you go down the left-hand column till you get to 10, and then you go across till you're in the 10% column. So for this case, 10 and 10%, you should find 0.3855. And that would be your PVIF at 10 and 10%. These little numbers on these tables, these are not just randomly generated or anything. We'll talk about all that later, but right now I want you to become familiar with these tables. What I want you to do is be able to find the table and look up the interest factor efficiently. If you want to write across the top of your PVIF table, PVIF in bigger letters or something like that, that's all fine. That's good. I want you to efficiently be able to find the table you need and then find the interest factor that you're looking for. Now, I'm going to teach you not only how to use time value of money tables, but I'll also show you how you use your calculator. But to use a calculator now, you have to understand time value of money. Your calculator can't do time value of money if you don't understand it. And so these tables are just a way of me teaching you time value of money. We will learn how to do these things on calculators. I'll write up these problems, what I call longhand, using the tables, and then on the side, I'll show you how it is you would do the same thing, but with your calculator. So we will use calculators. I am going to teach you how to use them, but first though, I want you to understand time value of money and how to understand it. The calculator is nothing more now than an electronic version of these tables. So if you understand the tables and you understand how to set them up with the tables, using a calculator to do the problems now, that becomes a much simpler process. But fundamentally, you need to know how to do time value of money. Your calculator will never know how to do time value of money. And by the way, in a report for your boss or your client, they don't want to see you draw up buttons that you pushed on your calculator. They want to see it written out longhand like I'm going to show you how to do it here. What we do longhand is what's called reproducible. That is, somebody else would come along and get the same answer. The buttons on your calculator, unless everybody's calculator is set up the same way, you're not all going to get the same answer. So again, I'll show you how to set up a calculator. I'll show you how to work these problems on calculator. But first though, you need to learn how to do time value of money, and that's what all these lectures are.